Hi, welcome to FranklinCovey's On Leadership series. I'm Scott Miller and I serve as your ongoing host. Today I'm delighted to have in the studio FranklinCovey's Vice President of Consulting and the co-author of the best-selling book, The 5 Choices. Leena Rinne, welcome to On Leadership.
Thanks, Scott.
There's a short walk down from the suite upstairs,
That's right?
So I'm glad you're here today.
Glad to be here.
Looking forward to talking about the 5 choices. I don't want to forget, at the end of the interview, let's talk about another book you're co-authoring called Fierce Loyalty, coming out in just about 8 weeks.
That's right.
So if I forget,
exciting.
Remind me about that. So today's all about the 5 choices. Now, you co-authored this book about 4.5, 5 years ago, went on to be a Wall Street Journal bestseller. Congratulations.
Thank you.
As if you needed one more accolade to add to your already long resume. Lena's one of those you love to hate because she's kind of the full package and everything, right?
Thanks.
You co-authored it with Corey Kogan and Adam Merrill. And we had Corey in a few months ago in the set. And Corey did kind of a bit of a water ski across all 5 choices. Today I want to take a deep dive on choice 5.
Choice 5.
We'll get to it in a minute.
Yep.
First, I want to just kind of refresh for our audience, of which many more thousand subscribers have joined since Corey's interview.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to not quiz you, but pitch you
Is this a quiz?
each of the 5 choices and have you give us a little bit of context for each.
Love to.
Kind of set the level playing field, all right?
Perfect.
First is act on the important, don't react to the urgent.
That's exactly right. So that's the foundational choice. That's where I have to be able to discern what are my real priorities, what's important versus what's not important. And you really do have to get that one right. If you don't, every other effort is a bit meaningless. So
It's the
making
reason why
sure
it's
you know
number
the
1,
priorities.
right?
That's exactly
Foundational.
right. That's right. They're
Yeah.
not in random order.
Great.
Yeah.
Number 2, go for extraordinary, don't settle for ordinary.
Okay, so in this choice, it's where we get clear on what does extraordinary look like to me, because it's different to me than it is to you, just inherently. You're a different person, different roles. So have I defined what it means to be extraordinary so that I've got this goal or this vision of what I'm working towards?
And that you can align what's important to you so you can
That's
achieve
right.
extraordinary results.
That's exactly right.
Choice 3, schedule the big rocks, don't sort gravel.
Yes, so this is the metaphor. There are some things in your life that are worthy of your finest attention. Those are the priorities. So making sure that you prioritize your every week, right, to reflect what you've already decided is most important in alignment with your extraordinary vision.
Versus gravel is the...
It's all the minutia, right?
Yeah.
It's the minutia that we live in day to day. Yeah.
Okay, next is rule your technology, don't let it rule you.
Yes, and this
Too
one's
late.
critical for many of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in today's world, technology can be the thing that either accelerates your productivity or it can absolutely be the thing that hinders you as well. Yeah. So in this choice, we talk about how do you make sure that you align technology to your priorities and create appropriate boundaries so it's not what's derailing you continuously.
And not just derail, but it can consume you.
That's right. I mean, truly consume you.
Yeah, we'll talk about that some today as well. And then lastly, fuel your fire, don't burn out.
Yes. So although this is the 5th choice, it's not a footnote and it's not because it's the least important. This is about how do you maintain a high enough level of physical and mental energy to carry through on all the other choices, because you can make those choices maniacally, but if you are burning out, there is no way that you can execute on your top priorities or be productive in any real sense.
So I'm excited about this. In addition to co-authoring the book, there's a 1 and 2 day work session named the same that we've taught to literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people around the world.
That's right.
You have, I don't know how many hundred or thousands of reps, right? You have taught this content to many countries, many organizations, many cultures. You're passionate around all 5 of these. You and I discussed a couple of weeks ago in preparation for today's interview, which choice. And we spent a half an hour on the phone talking about which one. And we kind of brought it down to choice 4 or 5, right? The technology one or the energy one. And today we discussed the importance of the 5th choice.
Yes.
And that's where all time will be today.
And one I'm really passionate about. I mean, in the end, I just feel so excited to talk about this energy level and how critical it is and what you can do in a really tactical sense to improve your energy level.
In fact, when we talked about why we would discuss that today, you mentioned it's easy for people to dismiss it.
Yes.
So let's talk about it to elevate its importance.
Yes, that's right. And I've seen not only that individuals are dismissive, but you can see whole cultures, organizations, and leaders in particular that are a little dismissive. Even if we rhetorically will say it's important, then we don't behave in a way aligned with keeping energy levels high.
Because maintaining your energy level, nurturing it, feeding it is correlated directly to your productivity.
That's exactly right. And I think that's a little bit the missing piece. I mean, we hear all of this, exercise, eat right, etc. And then somehow we think it's more important to just plan our day chock full, constant go, on mode, head down, and stay up late, and we just grab what's there to eat. We aren't managing our stress. not realizing that those are really inextricably linked. If you're going to be more productive, you have to maintain a level of energy that supports the productivity.
Well, it's intuitive. But I don't think it's unfair to say when you ask people about their productivity in the office place, that energy doesn't come in the top 5, right? You think about your planning system, your outlook, your inbox, your technology, your punctuality, your how much you get done, right? Organizing your schedule.
Right.
I don't know that many people would say managing my energy is one of the top things,
critical.
although it is critical.
It is critical, and so many people are burning out, right? And in fact, interestingly, I was just reading an article how from a psychological perspective, the symptoms of burning out are identical to depression. So it's just tough to engage in things when you're burning out. And so yes, critical.
So I'm not depressed, I'm just burnt out. Yes. I speak for you all out there as well. Okay, let's talk about choice 5, right? So fuel your fire, don't burn out. There's 5 drivers within choice 5, so don't get confused, right? There's 5 choices.
Yes, and 5
in
drivers.
choice 5, there are these things called these 5 drivers.
That's right.
And you and your co-authors name them as move, eat, sleep, relax, and connect.
Yep.
And you're today going to spend some time talking about the last 3 in particular: sleep, relax, and connect.
Yeah, and if I can just say though, with all 5, what I think is powerful about the framework of move, eat, sleep, relax, and connect is it gives you 5 different areas that you can focus to increase your energy. So it's not just one thing. What we're saying is, maybe sleep is a tough one for you. You're not a great sleeper. Well, then there are 4 other drivers that you can focus on to create energy. Right. And maybe just taking a moment to evaluate on these drivers, are each of these adding or detracting from the level of energy that I have, right? If you were to just run through them, is the way I move adding or detracting from my energy level? And you can get a sense of where you might want to focus to maybe have the best leverage on the few activities you decide to pursue.
Let's dive deep into the last 3, sleep, relax, and connect. Yeah. I really appreciate what you and your authors wrote around the narrative about sleep in the book. You said, sleep is where you consolidate learning. Improve memory, and subconsciously sort out complex data and decisions. Getting a good night's sleep is not just enjoyable, it's vital to our own productivity.
Yeah, exactly. And there are 2 parts about sleep that I think are interesting. One is there's an intuitive and obvious effect of sleep, right? When you don't sleep well, even just for one night, you really can feel it the next day. We've all felt that, right? It's that exhaustion and that fogginess, it's a headache. But there are some things about sleep that are a little bit less intuitive and less obvious, perhaps. And now, today, there's so much research about sleep. Yeah. Books coming out all the time about how important it is. And just to your point, it's about the cognitive function and the neuroscience of what sleep does in terms of consolidating memories, clearing out toxins from our brain, helping to process new information. And even with all of that science and the conversation about it, it's still one where we see so many leaders in particular are choosing not to get the amount of sleep that we know we need.
In fact, there's a debunking going on right now around the correlation between sleep and like laziness.
Yes.
Is that sleep is an intentional activity as important as what you eat and how you exercise. Sleep is an investment in you.
Yeah.
Talk about what the research says around how many hours of sleep people need and thinking about it as an intentional investment in your health. Not just, I'm lazy, so I'm going to bed, which I think in some ways has kind of become a bit of a common narrative.
It has, and I think it was particularly, a few years ago, leaders, it was almost bragging rights to say, it was like humble brag, only got 4 hours of sleep last night. And somehow that was perceived as being hardworking, right? That equates to hardworking. But so much research shows that you are compromised in the quality of your work and deliverables when you're sleeping less than you need to. And although there is an individual component to it, there are very few people that need less than 7 hours of sleep a night, and there are very few leaders that are getting 7 hours of sleep a night.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, I have felt like there's been an unintended cultural consequence of high-performing leaders who perhaps unintentionally diminish the culture because they do talk about how little sleep they need, how little, and there's some shaming going on. Maybe intentional, probably not, probably accidental around, well gosh, I should be sleeping less, or I should be up sending emails when you're sending emails. And
at midnight
and in
1,
your book you talk about also the importance of a leader to set a quadrant 2 culture versus a quadrant 1 culture. And it's also important for a leader to model, right?
It is.
Or if you're only getting 4 hours of sleep, be quiet. right? Because you're going to have some shaming involved that I
Yeah.
should be doing the same.
Because leaders create culture. You know, my co-author, Corey Kogan, she was magnificent at this. When she's had direct reports, she's always been very clear about her boundaries. So she might do emails Saturday, but she's let her team know, that's when I do mine. I would never expect you to reply that same day. But if she weren't overt about that, the assumption is that they ought to be responding right when they get the email, right? You get an email Saturday afternoon that was sent Saturday morning and it's made the rounds through 20 people already. So leaders do create culture. So creating a culture where we are resting appropriately, creating the right boundaries is really important. It's one of the things, Scott, I've always appreciated about you, because what time do you go to bed?
Oh, I'm asleep at 10 o'clock. I am entering my bed at 9.
Yes,
Because I know I need 7 hours minimum every night, and it took some courage of me to talk about that and admit it, because
not everyone, not everyone has that boundary.
Right.
Yeah, I've always appreciated, because you do make a point. You know, you're not going to catch me at 10 p.m. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's important for a leader to be able to.
But you can catch me at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Because I'm up ready to go Tigger style, right? At, at 4:35. In fact, it's not unusual for the CEO to text me at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I don't have any offense to that.
Right.
He never texts me after 9 p.m. because he knows, I'm asleep.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm a pretty productive person, I think, but I know what it takes for me to manage my energy through the day.
Yeah, and that's important. It's knowing what it takes for you to do that. And so there isn't, as I mentioned, an individual component to this, but if sleep is one of the drivers that you struggle with, there are lots of things you can do to get better sleep and more sleep. And part of that just starts with shifting your mindset about how important it is. Because if you really saw how critical it is, and again, so many studies about the cognitive functioning with lack of sleep, if you see it as priority, you will behave accordingly.
Right.
So
like,
it starts there.
Like your physical health and your mental health and your diet and such.
That's right. That's right.
I think it's more difficult for people to appreciate sleep because our worlds are now 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not unusual for us to get text all night long.
That's right.
My wife has her mobile phone tied to all the security cameras.
Yeah.
So when a raccoon or a butterfly, goes in front of the camera, ding in the middle of the night, it goes off. And we have to be more deliberate around how we check out in the evenings. I was in a meeting just 2 days ago where the president of our firm asked, where is, his name is Scott actually, someone else, where is Scott Sumption right now? And someone said, oh, he's in China. And he said, oh, that makes sense because he was texting me at like 3 o'clock this morning. And he was up, not feeling the need to respond, but kinda, right? Because it was all we're all in the same time zone now, even though we're not. Everyone's kind of on the same 24-hour time zone.
And if you're a leader, again, that's so important, because if you're the one texting someone that reports to you who's on your team, they're feeling, even if your expectation isn't there, having worked with thousands of people, they'll say, no, my boss expects me to do this. And you can talk to the leader and says, no, I don't expect that. But they've never said it.
Right.
So leaders create culture. It's really important that we set that tone.
I think that's a very valuable tip today. As a leader, you're creating culture by accident or on purpose, regardless of your intentions. It's happening. So if you are getting less sleep, requiring less sleep, or whatever it is, you should make the boundaries clear to your team. Don't do what I'm doing on this. Or if you are doing that, you could perhaps send emails to go out later in the morning. It's easy to set a time for your emails to leave later in the morning,
That's right. That's right.
Let's talk about where most of us sleep, the bedroom.
Yep.
You aren't the only person to have an opinion on this. Lots of research around how people should create their bedroom, their bed, for optimal sleep.
Yeah.
Walk us through those top kind of 5 or 6 things that
lots of things.
May seem trivial, but they're not.
They're not. So one is your physical comfort. I mean, it's as simple as, is your mattress, your pillow, your linens, your pajamas, I mean, are you feeling okay physically? It's also, reducing
So my
stimulation.
silk one piece, is that going to be okay?
Do you feel good in it, Scott?
I feel creepy now.
No.
Keep going. I'm not wearing that.
There's also things like stimulus. So do you have blackout curtains? People tend to sleep better in complete dark. Or people use eye masks or earplugs or white noise machines. I mean, if sleep is something you struggle with, there are so many things you can do, even just by typing a quick browser search on sleep tricks or tips.
And each one might feel small, but collectively they're going to help you.
Yes, that's right.
You also write about preparing for bed as important as you prepare for other parts of your day, limiting your caffeine intake and eating and exercise. Talk about some of those things.
Yeah, so if you eat a large meal within an hour of the time you go to bed, you're going to sleep worse. If you're drinking caffeine after mid-afternoon, you will sleep worse. So it's some of these kind of physiological things, and then again, to your point, having a routine, whether it's it's a hot shower or some meditation that you do, but having a routine also helps signal to your brain it's time to go to sleep, and managing your technology in that last hour before you go to sleep is critical as well. Right, so it's making sure that you don't have the blue light coming off of your computer screen or your phone. It's setting your technology aside, and just to your point earlier, creating appropriate boundaries around your phone when you sleep as well.
Right, which is increasingly difficult because I have to think, even happily married couples in the bedroom have their phones in bed, right? And they're doing last-minute texts, or they're checking their social media stream, or they're checking on their kids, or the cameras in their house.
Or they use it as the alarm clock. I use it as my alarm clock.
Or perhaps listen to something when you go to sleep, or a sleep tape or something. What are some, as a technology expert, which you are, what are some tips you might give people around managing their phone settings to make them work well for them at night during sleep?
Well, again, I think it starts with having the mindset of how critical sleep is so that you're willing to create some of the boundaries. And then your technology has incredible functions. There are do not disturb functions. So one thing you mentioned to me when we were speaking last week that I thought was so interesting is those of us that have aging parents might be concerned, a late night call, you want to be accessible, right? And yet there are settings that say if it's a call from these 5 people, let it through, otherwise don't.
So I could literally set my phone to ring for calls from my mother, my father, my brother.
Yes, that's right. But otherwise, do not disturb.
10 p.m. and 5 a.m.
Right. And it takes just,
Seconds.
1 minute to set that up, and then 2 seconds every night to make sure that's on. So just spending a moment to say, how important is sleep? Every ding that's going to pull you out of your sleep, you're paying for. I mean, there's a cost to that disruption. So just saying, I'm not willing to pay that price because I understand how critical sleep is.
I've used something that Dr. Daniel Amen, who was on our show a couple weeks ago, mentioned to my boys. I have a 4, 6, and 8-year-old boy. And getting them to bed is obviously a big challenge, right? Especially in the fall where it's still bright out at 8 p.m. And I've talked about how just like you wash your bodies, boys, when you go to sleep, your brain has to wash itself. There is this, other than your physical body, your brain needs to clear out and clean up, and you only do that when you're sleeping.
Yeah, and what people don't realize is that's actually physiological. At night, your brain cells actually shrink just a little bit so that there's wider pathways between, and the fluid actually flushes out toxins. So you're exactly right. This is about cleaning your brain, consolidating memories, improving cognitive function, and just improving capability and performance.
I think I don't necessarily enjoy sleep. It's not something I look forward to, but I definitely recognize its necessity and importance in my energy and my own productivity.
And I'm the opposite of you. I love staying up late. I mean, if I could choose, I would go to bed at 1 o'clock every morning. I just love it. I love those quiet hours. And I don't go to bed at 1 in the morning because I know I'm paying a price when I do. And some of that is just willpower to say, it's time for bed and I'm getting in bed.
Intentionality, right?
Yeah, there's intentionality.
Great conversation around sleep. I'm passionate about that. Thanks for the insights. We've been joined today by Leena Rinne, who is the co-author of the book, The 5 Choices. We're talking mainly about choice 5, fuel your fire, don't burn out, and 3 of the 5 drivers within choice 5. We just spent some time on sleep. We're going to talk now about relax.
Yes.
Who knew? Who knew that relaxing could improve your productivity?
Part of productivity. In fact, not just can, but it's a critical part of our productivity.
This is also about managing stress, right?
Let's
spend some time talking about how the driver of learning to relax as part of the 5 drivers in the 5th choice of the 5 choices. You don't make things easy.
Not for you, apparently, Scott.
Well, I need more sleep. Talk about how we can manage the stressors in our life.
Well, so if I can just share what's so critical about this driver. Relax, again, this is individual. What relaxes you might not relax me. We have individual things and individual ways of managing stress.
By the way, I relax no one. Just so you know.
Being in your presence is relaxing, Scott. But every single one of us, just because we're humans and physiologically, the stress hormones that we are functioning with are damaging. And part of the reason that is that our stress response was evolved to respond to very immediate stressors. So you have a threat, your body reacts, then it flushes out those
flight
stress.
or fight
yes,
or
that's
freeze.
right,
Yeah.
that's right. And in today's world, we don't have these immediate stressors that go away. We have a constant heavy stress. And it's the workload that we're carrying, it's the mortgage we're responsible, it's the demands of our personal lives.
Saber-toothed tigers attacking us are rare.
Yes,
rare.
that's right,
Yeah.
that's right. And so we have a lifestyle that creates mounting pressure, mounting stress, and we're just not very well adapted for it. So the price we pay is in our health and in our productivity. So it's figuring out how do we create routine and processes that will let us relax within our chaotic schedules.
I mean, identifying your stressors is important. It's vital to helping to figure out how to compartmentalize them and manage them down. I read once recently, one of those pithy quotes on social media that said, "Don't be a worrier, be a warrior."
Oh, I love it.
And it talked also about, how much procrastination can lead to stressors in our life and such. And the more proactive we are, and the more centered we are on our priorities, on our values, that they can sometimes even take the place of the minor stresses that become bigger stresses in our life, the more focused we are on what's important to us.
Yeah, that's right. It's how all of these other choices can actually help you manage your stress, right? If I know what's important, if I know what extraordinary means and I'm prioritized, that means there's less stress in my life. And then there's lots of other things you can do to manage your stress as well.
You probably can't solve anybody's mortgage stress, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
But give us some tips on some practical things on what we can do to lessen our stress, or at least, kind of tap it down.
Yeah, so I think, again, because it's individual, and I'd actually love to hear from you what you've seen other leaders do or what you yourself do. But the types of things I see, of course, being out in nature in the sunshine, so getting a walk at lunch or a 10-minute walk at break, getting outside, breathing deep, meditation, spending time with friends, your favorite hobbies often relax you, and again, having perspective. My work today, if you fast forward a month, is this stressor going to have long-term impact, right? Or in a year from now, and yet we get so wrapped up in the moment and so caught up in being reactionary to what's coming at us. So part of it's maybe zooming out a little bit as well. I'd love to hear from you. I mean, what other things do you see leaders doing? What do you do?
I mean, for me, I would go back to procrastination. In my role, I have a heavy load of deliverables. I write a LinkedIn article every week. I write a blog for this series. I'm co-authoring 3 books right now. I'm interviewing a guest every week. So a lot of deadlines.
Yes.
And the marketing division that I collaborate with has some tight deadlines. If my blog is, 5 hours late, it puts them into, a free fall, right? Because they have templates to build and videos to edit and things like that. So I find that I have to do a better job of being much more proactive. If my article's due on Wednesday, I really need to be thinking about it on Thursday, the week before, and writing it on Friday and editing it on Saturday, so it's ready to kind of germinate over the weekend. So I have to be much more proactive as I have these deadlines, because historically, when I was the leader, I was less concerned about things backing up for others, honestly. And now, as I'm kind of peer-to-peer, I realize that I have to do my share, right? What is that major phrase? Your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency on my part.
That's right.
I'm more mindful of being more proactive and less procrastinating.
And procrastination is an interesting one, because we do have this cognitive aversion to anything that we perceive as unpleasant. So if there's something that it's a
like the mortgage.
or the article, even if we enjoy writing, it's one of those things that's kind of weighting us down. But that cognitive aversion, if you just launch into the activity, if you stop procrastinating and say, I'm just spending 5 minutes on it, you'll overcome that aversion. And 5 minutes in, you're ready to actually do more work on it. So it's just starting sometimes that.
Something else I see that I do, other leaders do, is just take on too much. Just blatant, overcommitting. It's my fault. I can't be on 3 church committees. I can't be on 2 school committees, and I just have to be more mindful. I can't be all things to all people. I can't manage everybody's career and all of that. I have to start saying no, because my stress begins when I let someone down.
Yeah, and this, again, loops right back into choice 1 and 2. Do I know what my priorities are? Do I really know what's important to me? And have I defined my vision of being extraordinary? Do I know what it means to be extraordinary in all of my roles, as a leader, as a colleague, as a parent, as a spouse? Because if I know what it means to be extraordinary in those roles, I can quickly discern that activity, it doesn't get me closer to extraordinary, and I have to say no to it, or I'm compromising who I want to be. Right, I'm compromising my extraordinary vision.
I think the power of no can't be underestimated, the value of it. I was talking with Stephen M.R. Covey, our colleague who wrote The Speed of Trust, last week. And we're bringing him in tomorrow to talk with a outside PR agency because we have a lot of media outlets asking him to write columns and give speeches. And I was frustrated that Stephen wasn't more excited about it. And as I was pitching to him this great opportunity, he basically humbled me, not intentionally, and said, Scott, I haven't not been doing this from a lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
He says, it's just, I don't want to disappoint, let people down. I deliver on my commitments, which is one of his 13 behaviors, right? And he's very intentional around what he agrees to do, because if he says yes, you can take that to the bank. And he's very deliberate around not saying yes to too many things, even sometimes great things. Otherwise, with most of us, we'd be like salivating. The New York Times called, they want an article? Maybe not the Times, right? Different interview. But you get the point, right? I was really inspired by his careful, deliberate way to say, I'm saying no, not because that's not interesting, but I want to make sure I deliver on that and don't violate expectations.
You know, I just read a story about Peter Drucker, who did the same thing, you know, father of modern management, so profound in his work. But he would be asked to do interviews, and he would frequently, nearly always refuse, and in that refusal would say, I have a giant wastebasket by my desk where I put requests like yours. Not because I don't respect the work you're doing, but because by doing so allows me to focus on my own work.
Well,
Right, and so I think when you look throughout history and all of the people that we admire, all of the people who've authored these books, you only get there by being able to say no to the things that aren't really aligned with your priorities. And doing so really does help you manage your stress.
And I might even argue that our last minutes here on this topic is that I think maybe the older you get, the wiser you get, hopefully the more mature, the more you can say no, the more you are less focused on trying to please others and more you're focused on pleasing yourself from the perspective of executing on your top priorities. What's important to me? Now, obviously, in any organization, you have to meet other people's needs. But I find myself, when I work from home, which I'm afforded the opportunity, I can say, I did like 7 things that are important to me. Now, important to me to drive the business, but I didn't spend my entire day just serving and solving other people's needs.
That's right. That's right. And you didn't spend the day sinking into the menial tasks that we find ourselves so wrapped up in.
I probably did, but it's different. That's the gravel, right? So, Leena, thank you. Great conversation around stressors.
Thank you.
So if you're just joining this third part, we have Leena Rinne, who is the Vice President of our consulting division. And she's joining us today at FranklinCovey talking about the best-selling book, The 5 Choices, specifically choice 5, around fuel your fire, don't burn out. We spent some time talking about the 5 drivers. I'll repeat what those are. Within choice 5, move, eat, sleep, relax, and finally connect. Let's spend some time talking about the value of connections, how social relationships help to fuel our fire and build our energy and productivity.
Right, and so connect, when we talk about connecting, this really is anchored in the relationships that we have and also connecting with your purpose, right? So it's connecting your relationships and connecting back to your purpose and your priorities. In terms of relationships, we are social beings. Whether you're introverted or extroverted, relationships are an important part of our lives. And the question is, are we intentionally investing in those relationships? Are we intentionally spending time with those people that we know are most important to us and building those relationships, reaching out to them, spending, investing energy in them? We know that doing so gives you energy as well.
So much science around the value of relationships, especially in retirement. And I may be wrong, but there's some studies around one of the reasons why women live longer than men is because some of the richness of their relationships older in life, and sometimes, and this is probably a too broad statement, but too often men have so few relationships, they become a little more mentally isolated. Is there truth to that?
Well, I don't know about the gender, I haven't seen studies on the gender differences, but absolutely true around how you feel and your health when you're isolated. I mean, absolutely. In fact, there are some even studies that show in a short-term sense, people who are isolated for as little as 12 hours start to perform more poorly on cognitive tests, right? 12 hours of isolation. And this loops back into choice 4 in technology. It is a bit easier to be isolated in today's world when you're only connecting digitally through social media. So when we developed the content and wrote the book, we partnered with Ed Hallowell, who talked about it's so critical to have what he called a human moment. And a human moment is where you're present and you're with someone, and how much that does for our mood and our thinking and our energy and our productivity.
Seems like a nice to have, but it's a must have.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And yet, like
sleep,
that's
like
exactly
relaxation,
it.
these are important topics in our life.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we think, well, I can still just power through. You don't pay an immediate price if you get a bad night of sleep or even a week or a month of sleep. You can power through, but you certainly aren't achieving the level of extraordinary productivity we're talking about. And that's true with any of these drivers, including Connect. You can be isolated and ignore your friendships or your relationships for some amount of time. But again, you're paying a price for it. So
It's a fact that we're social beings.
Yes.
And that our brains and our health thrive on that.
Yes.
I think my gender slander was probably right, because there'll be 100 people at my funeral, 100 people. My wife will need to run a stadium. Because there'll be like 50,000 people at my wife's funeral. She's very social.
And I found the compelling, the life expectancy that comes with that. I mean, I absolutely could see that would impact that.
I also think that as it relates to relationships, again, our intentionality, right? I wrote an article once and I have a video about how important it is to not accidentally but deliberately pick our friends. Yeah. That if you look at your circle of friends, how many of them kind of come in accidentally, and were they, meeting a certain need? Have you kind of deliberately identified what role they play in your life? Right. I think you can get yourself also on the flip side, which is too many relationships, and they're fatiguing and exhausting. They're not actually adding value to your life, and the same, you adding value to theirs.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it comes right back to being intentional and saying no to those things that aren't adding to you, aren't adding to your productivity and to your vision of extraordinary.
As I interview you more, I realize how deliberate the book is. All of these thoughts really come together, and they're not episodic at all, right? They're numbered for a reason, they're named for a reason. Yes. The 5 drivers build on each other. So let's have you back sometime to talk about choice 4 around technology.
I would love that.
Because there's a great link between ruling your technology and having balance in your life, right?
Yes,
not letting it rule you.
Huge balance. In fact, you just have to say that and people are like, yep, there is.
Yes.
There definitely is,
Before we end, let's talk about the next book coming out. Okay. So you are a co-author with Sandy Rogers and Sean Moon on FranklinCovey's next, we think, big bestseller.
Yep.
It's coming out on November 6th, which is Election Day. Did you time that way? Was there a message you had in that? Probably. That's the publisher. We'll blame that on the publisher,
Fierce
right?
loyalty.
November 6th in 2018. The title is Fierce Loyalty, and I love the tagline, cracking the code to customer devotion.
That's right. It was such an incredible process writing the book and doing all of the research around it. The premise of the book is that customer loyalty can determine your success or failure as an organization. And while customers respond to the frontline person they interact with, that person really is responding to their leadership. So the book is about how do you create a culture where you're focused on building loyalty, and what are the specific behaviors that are required to build loyalty through your frontline and through your leadership team as well.
And the book has a kind of a double purpose, right? It's building loyalty with customers, but also with your employees.
Yes.
Because it's based on this adage that, treat your employees well, they'll take care of your customer.
That's right.
Not quite that aloof, but I mean.
Yeah, well, Dr. Covey said, always treat your employees the way you would want them to treat your very best customer, because it does flow through.
Yeah. The book is organized around these 11 huddles, these huddles that you teach with team leaders and managers. And the book, like the 5 choices, aligns directly with the offering, the one day work session, called
Leading Customer Loyalty.
Leading Customer Loyalty, that's right. So I'm excited for autographed copy.
Yeah,
we'll get that book up on the wall. Maybe we'll have you back if you'll come back.
I'd love
for
to.
interviewing that topic as well.
Thank you,
Leena,
Scott.
great
Thank you
insight.
so much.
I feel like you're the neuroscientist that I always wanted in a great friend. Not a neurologist. Don't do that, right?
Open that brain up.
Exactly. Stay away. Leena, nice to have you.
Thanks, Scott.
We hope you improve your sleep, relax more, manage your stressors, and actually have a little bit better social connections in your life as a result of our discussion with Leena Rinne. As always, this comes out every Tuesday, the On Leadership series, both in an email newsletter that has a downloadable tool and a blog, as well as in a podcast format on all of your podcast channels that are your favorite too. So we'd love it if you would tell your friends and family and colleagues about the On Leadership weekly newsletter and have them subscribe as well. And we'll see you back here next Tuesday for another great interview. Thanks so much.